because we've got some breaking news. We are so happy to have Howard Balzer each and every Wednesday on the All Access Football Daily Show. And I got the email at about 4:38 a.m. about a special announcement that he's going to make right here on the show. So take it away, Howard.
All right. Thank you, Rick. And, of course, we had a big discussion about the Pro Football Hall of Fame back when I joined you at the beginning of this season. And just moments ago, the Pro Football Hall of Fame has announced the 128 modern-day nominees for the 2026 class of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I'll tell you, when you look at that list and you go, oh, my goodness. I mean, again, when you see all the quality players that are on that list, and one of the notable things about it, and I know it's been talked about a little bit throughout these last few months, 13 first-time eligible players that are on this list. And, you know, one of the things we talked about back going into week one was how it's just hard to break into that final 15 that the selection committee discusses in January to vote on who will be elected last year. And so of that 128, 12 of them, of course, are players that were returning from that top 15. And those are, I'll say them quickly, Willie Anderson, Jerry Evans, Torrey Holt, Luke Kuechly, Eli Manning, Steve Smith Sr., Terrell Suggs, Fred Taylor, Adam Vinatieri, Reggie Wayne, Darren Woodson, and Marshall Yonda. So those 12 guys are in the nominees. Now listen to this list, Rick, of the 10 semifinalists last year, that's the top 25, that did not advance to the final 15. Anquan Bolden, James Harrison, Rodney Harrison, Robert Mathis, Earl Thomas, Hines Ward, who's been a semifinalist now. This is his 9th time as he hasn't been a semifinalist yet. If he becomes a semifinalist, it'll be his 10th time as a semifinalist, never reached the final 15. Ricky Waters, Richmond Webb, Vince Wilfork, and Steve Wisniewski, who was in his final year of modern-day eligibility. So the thing is, when you have 12 guys coming back from the finals last year, and by the way, the 4 players that made the top 7 last year, which is Willie Anderson, Torrey Holt, Luke Kuechly, and Adam Vinatieri, they're automatically in the top 15, in the final 15. So there's only 11 other spots. Here's the first-time eligible guys. Now, a lot of them we know are not going to advance that far, but you've got Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, Alex Smith, Larry Fitzgerald, Greg Olson, Jason Witten, Frank Gore, LaShawn McCoy, David DeCastro, Marquise Pouncey, Geno Atkins, Jarrell Casey, and I'll tell you, one of maybe the more unsung linebackers in the history of the NFL who came back from 2 or maybe 3 torn ACLs. I forget how many there were. Thomas Davis, you know, what a warrior he was. So you have to wonder, how many of those guys are going to take a spot in the final 15, maybe away from a guy that was in the final 15 last season? And so those are some of the names that wanted to get out there. But the process now, there's a special committee that will reduce this 128. It's not the selection committee. It's a special committee that will reduce the 128 to 50. And then we in the committee will get that list of 50 and first vote on 25 and then vote on the final 15 and then meet in sometime in January to elect the modern day guys, coach, contributor, and potential seniors for the class of 2026. Yeah, it just shows the quality of guys. And, you know, I didn't mention guys who are on this list, right, that have never been a semifinalist, never been a finalist, really good players. But do they rise to Hall of Fame level? But it just shows. People can go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame website. They can see the whole list and go, oh, my goodness. I say this all the time, Rick. Oh, he's not in the Hall of Fame? He's not in the Hall of Fame? He's not in the Hall of Fame? No, those guys aren't. And it's going to be, once again, just, an amazing process. And then I can just imagine, Drew Brees, you have to believe he's going to be in the final 15. I think Phillip Rivers is deserving. Not sure it'll happen in his first year. But then you got Eli Manning coming back, who last year didn't even make the initial cut from 15 to 10. So there's all these discussions that is part of an amazing day for the selection committee every year.
Fascinating stuff. I'm always into the Pro Football Hall of Fame selection process. Now, you mentioned they're going to cut it down from 128 to 50. Is that the blue ribbon panel that you're alluding to? Who actually determines
it? Yeah, it's interesting. They instituted that last year. I believe that's what it's called, a blue ribbon committee. None of us even know who's on it.
Really?
Yeah, they haven't announced who's on it. We don't know. It's not, none of the selectors are on that committee. And so they just did, for whatever reason, they decided to do that. And they've done it with some of the other categories also. And so, but yeah, that's what it's called. And they will be, working. I believe that we'll know the 50 sometime next month. It'll be announced. And so, but like I said, the Hall of Fame keeps that very close to the vest in terms of who are on, those committees that are, cutting down. And then there's usually not any surprises on there, but, it brought in another group of people kind of to look at it and, give kind of an outside look at a lot of these candidates.
It just doesn't seem to make logical sense to me if you have one group cutting down the list and then the people who actually make the selections getting that list. I got to reach out to the Pro Football Hall of Fame and see if we can have somebody on to add clarification, because the lack of transparency is, I think that's something that the fans should be privy to in terms of how these guys are selected. No?
Well, and I think part of it is that, I'll say this, we on the committee, we get overwhelmed with, whether it's on social media, whether it's emails, whatever it might be, just from fans out there. And hey, I salute them. Fans are passionate. Of course, they want their favorite guy in the Hall of Fame, and they think that the guy has been, whoever it is, has been snubbed. But I think what they probably don't want is this committee then being added to that process of people overwhelming them. Well, you got to vote for my guy. You got to vote for this guy. Here's this guy. And so that could be, one of the reasons that they do that. Because like I said, we get an incredible amount of communication from passionate fans who are advocating for their special players. And it's kind of, we're all accustomed to it. It's been like that for a long time. This will be my, including 2026, this will be my 22nd year as a Hall of Fame selector. And that aspect of it has never changed. And so it's kind of just the way it is.
Well, let me just give you some initial reactions. First off, I can't believe guys like Luke Kuechly, that one really stands out to me because I know it's a shorter career, but he really, I thought, was a dominant. I thought the best linebacker in the NFL for a certain period of time there. Adam Vinatieri is a tough one because kickers are just so tough, but he meant so much to those Super Bowl teams. And then I feel like Darren Woodson almost gets overlooked because how many guys are on that in the Hall of Fame from the Cowboys dynasty? You got Aikman, you got Irvin, you got Emmett, you got Charles Haley. They must have a slew of I think another one just got in recently from that Dallas team. But in terms of new candidates, man, this is bad news for Eli Manning. I hate to break it to New York Giants fans as if they needed more bad news. But to me, Drew Brees clearly stands out amongst the three, log-jammed quarterbacks, Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning, and Drew Brees. And we had an enlightening conversation a couple weeks back about when Big Ben also joins the mix from that 2004 draft class. But man, Eli Manning could be waiting here. And then Larry Fitzgerald, I do see Fitzgerald maybe ahead of Hines Ward and Torrey Holt, but it's going to be a very interesting selection process. And then you got to weigh Jason Witten versus Greg Olsen. Man, these are some tough decisions, Howard. Let me ask you this. Would you be the presenter, do you think, for Larry Fitzgerald, or how does that process work?
No, that will be Kent Summers. Here in Arizona, who he's currently retired from full time at the Arizona Republic, where he was for a lot of years covering the Cardinals beat, and also then became a columnist before he retired a couple of years ago. But he's still on the committee, so he will be the main presenter for Larry Fitzgerald. I will once again present Torrey Holt. You mentioned him. He's an automatic finalist, as I mentioned. This will be his 7th year as a finalist, and it's who knows how close he was last year. We talked about this a few weeks ago, and you mentioned Kuechly. He was in that final 7, which was one of the ways they changed the process. And usually it's been a final 5, and then 5 guys get in. This year they changed it to 7, and because of the voting mathematics of it, only 3 were elected. We'll never know if we had voted to 5, would Torrey Holt have made it to the 5? Would Luke Kuechly, who was in that final 7? We don't know the answer to that, but it definitely kept the class down and makes it harder to get in, especially if there's another class of 3. And so, that's the deal with that. Torrey Holt has been a semifinalist. I'm trying to remember now how many years. I think it's 11. It's around 11 times. Since he became eligible for the first time, he's been a semifinalist every single year, and then been a finalist 7 times. Or he this will be his 7th time in 2026. And so, those are the things that that happen. And so, like you said, with the guys coming back, these new names, how many first time? Last year there were 5 first-time eligible guys that were in the final 15, and Kuechly and Vinatieri made that 7. Eli Manning did not survive the cut to 10. He was a first-time eligible last year. Steve Smith, Sr., did not survive the cut to 10. And then Marshall Yanda did make it to the 10, but then he did not make it to the 7. You look at his record, and, a guard, so they don't get a lot of fanfare during their career. But you look at his career with the Ravens, he's going to be in there at some point. But like I'm saying, it's only getting harder and harder if this way of doing it continues. And who knows? Yeah, look at it this way. If it's 3 guys every year instead of 5 for the next 5 years, that means by the time the 5 years is over, 10 guys who would have been in won't be. And that's making it harder not only to get in, but it's harder then for other guys to break into that top 15 and be discussed in the room, because so many guys aren't elected each year. Like I said, 12 finalists from last year are coming back. If all 12, well, we know 4 of them will be finalists. If the other 8 are, that only leaves 3 other spots in the finals. So it's tough. I know they're going to keep looking at, and I have a feeling that if the 3 happens again for 2026, it'll be a long, hard look at the process, and perhaps just raising the minimum. If you want to still do it the same way, voting for 5, raise it, because 3 is the minimum. 5 could get in by the rule, not by the math. It's very hard, but 3 have to get in. And so maybe raise that to 4 to at least get one other guy in that is deserving. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens, coming down the road. But this is the process that there will be for 2026.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of log jams if they don't do something about how they alter the selection process. One last guy I want to mention, because Ricky Running Waters, like, for him, can't even crack the finalist. I always felt like he was one of the more complete backs in NFL history, and I guess I don't think Roger Craig ever got in either. But
and he was finalist several times. I don't have the number in front of me. He has been in the seniors now for a couple of years and has gotten some strong consideration there, but he hasn't made that final 3 finalists. But you're right about Waters. But here's the interesting thing about him, and I wanted to mention something about Darren Woodson too, who you brought up. Waters, this is his final year of modern day eligibility. And so that means his 20th year as a modern day eligible guy.
Decades fly, man. Let me tell you.
He's been a semifinalist in the previous 19 elections 5 times out of 50, out of those 19. Darren Woodson has had more success moving on in the process. He's been a finalist 3 times, and a semifinalist 9. And this is his 18th year of eligibility. So he only has 2 more classes to go. And if he doesn't get in, like Waters, then where do they go? To what we call the abyss of the seniors category. And I'll tell you another guy to look at. I was mentioning Yonda. Steve Wisniewski.
Yeah, I have him here too. Yep.
Was just a killer in his time in the another guard, though. Another guard. But this is his final year of eligibility, and he's only been a semifinal, never a finalist. He's been a semifinalist twice in 19 years.
That's unbelievable.
All we do is look at the tape, look at what his accomplishments, and sometimes you just don't know why certain guys kind of fall into the cracks, and then when they're not a semifinalist for a certain amount of time, unless someone is strongly advocating for them, then they kind of get forgotten about as you have this new group of first-time guys coming in every year, plus all the returning players.
Yeah, it feels like offensive linemen generally are just harder to get that push. Like Willie Anderson was buried in a terrible Cincinnati team for his whole career. But, I mean, that's another guy to me that really deserves a good hard look.
I think he got overlooked, I believe, in the beginning because he played right tackle. And most of the guys that were getting in were your left tackles. Your Jonathan Ogdens, Walter Jones, Willie Rofe, Orlando Pace. In the last few years, Tony Baselli was a left tackle, short career, but a left tackle. And so Anderson has gotten some traction in recent years, and this will be his 5th year as a finalist. And I think he's been eligible for about 12 years, somewhere in that number. But he's gotten some traction because of some good advocacy where it was pointed out that, hey, don't judge him just because he was a right tackle and not a left tackle. And then again, he did make that cut to 7, in the 2025 class. So we'll see what happens with him too. But, there's nobody, I don't think there's anybody on this list that you would say is not deserving of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And the only thing that rubs me the wrong way is when you hear comments, Rick, that, we didn't like a guy, right? Or they didn't get the respect that they deserved. Well, hey, I'm on the committee. We all realize how hard it is when we have to make these gut-wrenching decisions of who you vote for. But I always say this line: we don't vote against people. We vote for people. And sometimes the votes don't fall the guy's way. And the other part of it is, of the guys that were in that 7 last year, for example, we don't know if 1 or 2 of the players missed getting that 80% by 1 or 2 votes. And that's true of all the reductions. They're probably the guys who don't make the list in the reductions, at least the first group of guys, aren't very, very many votes behind. But that's just the nature of it when you only have 50 people voting. But no one knows how close anybody was. No one knows. Now, I had heard that there was someone from the coach contributor and seniors category that was close last year to getting the 80%, along with someone else from that modern day group. We don't know who it was. We don't know how many votes they missed by, but we just know that at least 2 guys were close to being elected. But as we know, close doesn't count in the Pro Football Hall of Fame voting.
Yeah, hand grenades and horseshoes. Is Bill Belichick a candidate this year?
Yeah, and he will be also. Yes, it used to be. There's an interesting little story. It used to be that a coach became immediately eligible when he retired.
Did Tuna put a monkey wrench into the
He totally did. He told a couple of guys, including, I believe, Peter King, that don't worry about it. And he was in the discussion, and he told a bunch of guys, "No, don't worry, I'm not coming back. I'm not coming back." And then he didn't get elected, but he came back to coaching, and so then he kind of drifted away. And then the Hall of Fame changed it to 5 years. It's like the players that you have to be out for 5 years. Well, now they've changed it back to 1. And so here's Belichick still angling to get back into the NFL. And you have to say that, well, even if he doesn't do great it's not going to really affect his legacy. But I can see where maybe 5 is too long for a coach, especially when they retire, maybe later in life than players. Mm-hmm. But maybe 1 is too short. Maybe it should be 3, whatever it might be. I mean, what the heck? Joe Gibbs came back after he was elected and came back to Washington and didn't do all that great in his second stint. So those things will happen. But yeah, Belichick could come up, and a lot of people are wondering with Robert Kraft has been close in the contributors category over the last number of years. Will there be this maybe a little emotional push to get both Belichick and Kraft in the same year? Hey, you never know. You never know.
The drama in Canton heats up. Unbelievable, fascinating stuff from Howard Balzer here in this special edition of the All Access Football Daily Show. We went a little bit over time, Howard. We appreciate the